All right, party peoples of the interwebs, there's an old expression that magic is only magical when you don't understand how the tricks are done, and that things are only mind-blowing when you don't understand them. The Supreme Court came down with its ruling on the Trump immunity case, and people are flipping their lids for unjustified reasons, and their minds are being blown when they don't understand the consequences of that decision because they haven't understood things from the very beginning. Now, to summarize that Supreme Court ruling, again, because I've done it previously in live streams, and I did it when I broke down Justice Clarence Thomas's separate opinion, which was magnificent, gave a little spanking to Attorney General Merrick Garland, saying you might have unlawfully appointed private citizen Jack Smith, and this entire prosecution might be dead from the start because unlawful, unconstitutional. Set that aside. The decision can be summarized as follows: that the president benefits from immunity when carrying out acts that fall within his constitutional duties, does not benefit from immunity when carrying out purely private acts, and that there is presumptive immunity when the conduct in question fits within the outer orbit, the outer ambit of his conduct as president, and that there should be a test that needs to be carried out in order to determine whether or not the impugned action fits into one of those three categories as either immune because it's within the constitutional authority of the president, not immune because it's a private act, or questionable and needs to be assessed on an act-by-act basis because it fits within that third middle category of presumptive immunity unless it can be shown to have been not within the outer ambit, outer orbit of his presidential authority, presidential duties. Now, in this majority decision, and something that people might have overlooked, was a section where the majority needles Judge Chutkan, the New York Judge Juan Marchand, in the case of that Soros-funded Alvin Bragg prosecution against Donald Trump. They issued this needle against the fine folks out of Georgia in the RICO case. The needle in the majority decision was that in all of these Trump prosecutions, at no point in time did any judge in any of these cases carry out the analysis to determine what the act in question would be categorized as a purely private act, as a presidential act within the constitutional authority of the president, or as an act within the outer bounds of the conduct of a president. None of the judges in these prosecutions ever took the time to analyze the act, the conduct in question, and in their decision, when the court recognizes that there will be presumptive immunity for acts within the outer orbit of the presidential conduct, they say none of the courts went through an analysis as to what the act could be qualified as, and they should have done it. The practical reality of this is it means that they're going to have to go back and analyze the indictments out of Georgia, out of DC as relates to the insurrection case, out of Florida as relates to the alleged classified information, classified documents, but out of the state of New York as relates to the charges for which Trump was just found guilty, for which he was just convicted. That doesn't escape the analysis that they didn't carry out in the first place. And I come across a tweet of someone who is just now starting to understand but not understand the ramifications of this decision. Tim Miller at TimODC, this fucker has a golden horseshoe up his ass. It's unbelievable. And he's quote tweeting Graham Cates that says, breaking, Trump's sentencing is postponed until September 18th, quote, if such is still necessary, end quote. Now, I don't know who Tim Miller is, but I can tell you that he's wildly ignorant. It's always the incompetent, the ill-informed that chalk up to good luck what is actually logically explained. Then I went to click on Tim Miller's bio, and I understood why he is such a raging idiot. Tim Miller, at TimODC, host of the Bulwark podcast, MSNBC analyst, author, quote, Why We Did It, end quote, Joe Kick, I don't know what that says, self-important podcaster, weak and gay, never Trump. And then in his banner it has Cuck Zone. I have no idea what the hell that means. Isn't it amazing that the people who incessantly play identity politics never miss an opportunity to tell you everything about their sexual proclivities? All right, I don't care anything about that except for the fact that the idiot works or is apparently an analyst at MSNBC. As far as I'm concerned, the term analyst and MSNBC do not go together. They are not simpatico. That is like fitting a circle in a square peg. But this idiot chalks it up to luck. Somehow Trump is just lucky that all of these malicious, unjustified, and unlawful prosecutions against him are falling apart because everyone violated the law pretty much at every step of these bullcrap persecutions. Yeah, Trump was convicted in that bogus persecution of the 34-count felony falsification of business records for the purposes of concealing the Stormy Daniels alleged hush money payment. Yeah, they got the conviction. They ran with the convicted felon headline for as long as they could. Do you know what time frame all of the alleged conduct in that case relates to? 2017, when President Trump was president. You know what that means? That they had to do the analysis at the time whether or not all of the alleged acts that occurred in 2017 fit within any one of the three categories of either immune because within the core constitutional duties of the president, not immune because they are purely private acts, or presumptively immune because they fit within the outer orbit, and you need to do an analysis to determine whether or not he can be prosecuted for those charges. But if you don't believe me, just read the actual freaking indictment. The people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump. Defendant, the grand jury of the county of New York, by this indictment accuses the defendant of the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree in violation of Penal Law Section 1750.10, committed as follows. The defendant in the county of New York and elsewhere, on or about February 14, 2017, with the intent to defraud and intent to commit another crime and aid and conceal the commission thereof, made and caused a false entry in the business records of an enterprise, to wit, an invoice from Michael Cohen dated February 14, 2017, marked as a record of the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust and kept and maintained by the Trump Organization. Then you get into the second count, February 14, 2017. Third count, February 14, 2017. Fourth count, February 14, 2017. Now, some of you kids sitting in the back of the class who haven't been paying attention might be asking yourselves, how does he have 4 felony charges all occurring on the same date? Well, you see, the way they jacked this up to a felony indictment as opposed to a misdemeanor, which it was at best, is they said he did this to conceal an underlying federal crime. And if you ask Judge Juan Marchand, the jury need not unanimously agree on what that predicate act underlying crime was. They just need to think that he did something else in order to unanimously convict him on these charges. But the reason for which there are 4 charges all occurring on the same day, of the same month, of the same year, is because each and every act of the entry of that falsified business record was turned into a felony. Signing the check, signing the ledger, signing that little piece of paper on the document, each and every entry had multiple levels to the entry, and they turned each entry into a 4 felony charge per month, as you can see. But the bottom line, all of this conduct occurred in 2017 when Trump was president. Thus, we need to ask the question and answer the question before a conviction. What type of act was this? And just to continue beating the dead horse for a moment, the defendant in the county of New York and elsewhere on or about March 16, 2017 through March 17, 2017, with the intent to defraud and intent to commit another crime and aid and conceal the commission thereof, made and caused a false entry in the business records of an enterprise, to wit, an invoice from Michael Cohen dated February 16, 2017, and transmitted on or about March 16, 2017, marked as a record of the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust and kept and maintained by the Trump Organization. 6th count, March 17, 2017. 8th count, April 13, 2017. 9th count, June 19, 2017. And I think you got the idea. Set aside the fact that it was the most outrageous, partisan, corrupt conviction ever. This is a politically motivated conviction, much like you had racially motivated convictions of eras past. This is a politically motivated conviction. They would have convicted a ham sandwich if they were told that ham sandwich were Republican. This was a politically motivated conviction that is probably going to get overturned or set aside because they never carried out the test in the first place to determine what type of act was at issue and whether it benefited from any immunity whatsoever. So congratulations, you wasted a shit ton of taxpayer dollars. You bastardized the judicial process. You desecrated the very fabric of American society, what people thought was a free and democratic American society. Pick up your stuff, pack up your stuff, get the heck out of New York State. But what's probably going to happen now, this conviction is going to get set aside, and that Judge Juan Marchand has his get out of jail free pass for himself. He now can wash his hands and say, oops, I got to set aside that verdict, even though it was going to get overturned on appeal for a number of factual and legal reasons. He gets to wash his hands and say, oopsie doodle, I got to set aside that verdict. We got to do the analysis, see whether or not this act can even be prosecuted in the first place, and then do it all over again. And this is mind-blowing to the idiot analysts at MSNBC. Hey, moron, Tim Miller, if you wanted to understand this, you could have watched vivabarneslaw.locals.com for the last 6 months, a year, if not more, to understand this, so that you won't be so flabbergasted. But I know that you're not actually flabbergasted. You are feigning flabbergastation, if I can create a word, so that you can take advantage of your ill-informed, low-information supporters who are now going to go around outraged at how lucky Donald Trump is and how broken the system is that this man was convicted and now he's going to get off because they going to self-censor there, but because they fudged up the system in order to get that conviction. And it's not just going to be New York. They got the conviction in New York, so that's going to be most shocking. Let's go to Rico in Georgia, shall we? Reading from that indictment, Act 140. On or about the 6th day of January 2021, Donald John Trump placed a telephone call to Vice President Mike Pence and solicited him to disrupt and delay the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021, the day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states. When Pence refused, Donald John Trump stated that Pence would, quote, go down as a wimp, end quote, and that Pence was not protecting the United States. This was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. Well, that's all fine and well, Big Fanny and her corrupt former lover Nathan Wade, but was that a constitutional duty, or was that an act within the core constitutional powers of the president? Was that a purely private act? I highly doubt it. Go back and do that analysis, but this case is never even going to get to trial. If Fannie Willis is even still a district attorney within the year, but yeah, you gotta kind of do that analysis before you start charging Trump for what, based on a reading of that indictment, is, at the very least, I would argue, arguably, an official constitutional power of the president to make sure that elections are done properly. But if you thought that was a laughably stupid allegation in the Georgia indictment, I've got a couple of other ones that are just so good. You look at them and you say, my goodness, you have to be stupid, corrupt, and lacking self-awareness to even make these types of allegations. Let me just read to you a couple more. And by a couple more, I actually just mean one more. Act 156. On or about the 17th day of September 2021, Donald John Trump committed the felony offense of solicitation of violation of oath by public officer in violation of OCGA section 16-4-7 and 16-10-1 in Fulton County, Georgia, by unlawfully soliciting, requesting, and importuning Georgia Secretary of State Brad Ratfaceberger, a public officer, to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of violation of oath by public officer, OCGA section 16-10-1, by unlawfully, quote, decertifying the election or whatever the correct legal remedy is and denounce the true winner, end quote, in willful and intentional violation of the terms of the oath of said person and prescribed by law, with intent that said person engage in said conduct. This was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. Now, this allegation was so freaking stupid that even at the time I had to call this judicial dog poop, that entire indictment, judicial dog poop. Well, now they're going to have to go back and reanalyze, reassess that judicial dog poop of an indictment and determine whether or not when Trump, as president, said find whatever the correct legal remedy is to make sure this election goes down properly, whether or not that was a core constitutional power of the president, a purely private act of the president, or maybe something that arguably fits somewhere within the two and therefore is presumptively immune from prosecution. We'll see. These idiots didn't think anything through before they even got started with this malicious persecution. They just wanted to go after Trump with the full brunt of the lawfare of a weaponized, politicized judicial system under a corrupt Attorney General Merrick Garland and corrupt hacks of Soros-funded district attorneys, Attorney Generals Leticia James, under corrupt judges like New York nipple judge Arthur Engeron, the corrupt judge in the E. Jean Carroll case Kaplan, the corrupt judge Juan Marchand in the New York Alvin Bragg prosecution, and the corrupt Judge Chutkan in the D.C. prosecution. Seems to me there's only one non-corrupt judge in all of this, Eileen Cannon, and lo and behold, you got your capital L lefty, capital D Democrat progressive tards out there calling for her to be impeached because they don't like a judge who actually follows the law. They want corrupt judges who carry out their political persecutions because they are suffering from the most severe case of TDS political prejudice you have ever seen. You can now understand how people in prior eras did horrible, horrible things and somehow justified it to themselves. So yeah, Tim Miller, Trump isn't lucky. He doesn't have a golden horseshoe up his butt. You're just an idiot who doesn't understand things, or you're pretending not to and hoping your viewers don't. But if you like what I do and you want to understand things and actually get the truth and a decent legal analysis to boot, Viva Frei, join me, subscribe, make sure your notifications are turned on. If you want to join the best law community anywhere, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, the Viva Frei on Twitter. But more important than anything, exercise, eat healthy, talk to people in real life, get out there, get some sunlight, and now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!